Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, the first of our winter series. Hello, Ben. How are you?
G'day, mate. How you going?
I'm terrific, mate. We're doing this winter series because you're enjoying winter in the sun, but I'm super excited about this series. We always have the summer series, but when we do, this is the first time we're doing winter series, but it's just another opportunity to go to the community and say, what is it that you've been doing and how have you implemented this so that other people could try and learn from you? So it's a really exciting part of the recordings for us, isn't it?
It's a here's proof moment, Bryce. Every episode is here's proof.
Yeah.
Here's proof it works. Here's proof it works. Yeah. No, it's good.
And then those people who say, yeah, it's all right, it works for you and Ben, Bryce, but what about the rest of us? Well,
here's proof.
We got a lot in store for you. So today's guests are super exciting to chat about. They have got heaps of layers in their story, Ben. There's COVID killing Korea. There is international traveling jet setters, all of that coming to an end, and then a pivot in careers, mindset, and planning. So there's lots in this episode. Let's cut to it now. The chat that we have with Tim and Tom. All right, Ben, we got very special guests today as part of our winter series. We are talking to Tim Martin and Tom Henry. Now, they've got an amazing backstory. I'm looking forward to diving in, but they are podcast listeners. And really, they are a story in not only thinking about your financial future, but also creating positive mindset when circumstances are going against you. So I'm super excited about diving into this chat today. But first of all, let's welcome to the Property Couch, Tim and Tom.
Thanks for having us.
Guys. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. Look,
T2s.
Yeah, T2, exactly. Both.
Yeah, double trouble.
Hey, crew, thanks for joining us today. And as I sort of hinted there is some really exciting, exciting in terms of interesting is probably a better description of your journey that you've been of late. But before we sort of get into that, it's always good to sort of see where we come from, right? So maybe if we could start with you, Tim. What was money like growing up for you over the kitchen table?
Money was a tough one, a tough conversation that was very rarely openly had while at the dinner table or in the family setting at all. I came from big stock, mum and dad being together forever, decided to have a big family of 5 kids. Dad was the big breadwinner working out in the mines. Mum also had jobs in the mines and a few other sort of pickup jobs. We were moving probably every few years. Mum and dad both working in mining meant we moved wherever the contracts were. But money was always a constant presence in terms of not enough of it for the family, and having to feed 7 mouths on one salary for quite a lot of the time was quite difficult. But I know conversations, I knew from a young age that money was a very handy thing to have, and it certainly opened up opportunities and doors for you. And I know that when I would bring it up, it would be quickly shut down and discouraged. It just wasn't something that mum and dad felt comfortable openly discussing.
Tim, with this movement, give us context. Are we around Queensland and mainly? And did you rent as you were moving around, or what were your parents doing in terms of, the accommodation side of things?
Yeah, of course. Well, I was born in Sydney, Mona Vale initially, and then very quickly we moved out to Laverton in WA for a number of years. Always renting or accommodation provided by the mining company, with whatever that arrangement was, I'm not quite clear. But then moving on as well to good old Roxby Downs in South Australia, where we lived for a number of years, mum and dad working out of Olympic Dam. Finally, probably after about 10 years of shifting around, we moved back to Sydney, back to the Big Smoke, back to the Northern Beaches, back to Mona Vale, where it all began.
Did you keep the property in Mona Vale as you were moving around, or did you sell the property?
No.
Always renting. Okay.
Mum and Dad's story was a bit surprising that they always rented up until we moved eventually up to the Central Coast in around 1997. So they'd been renting probably for the first 13, 14 years of my life. But finally, they decided that enough was enough. The kids were reaching an age where they were hitting their teens, all of us, and they realised that stability was probably the next important thing to focus on. So they decided to put down roots on the Central Coast and purchase finally their first home and go from there.
When you said that your parents discouraged those conversations, what did that look like? Just changing the subject and moving on, or actually saying, no, hose that down, let's move on? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think the purpose of it was that money was just something that was a necessary evil in life, but the pursuit of having more of it was probably not an ideal that they wanted us to strive towards. It was never a case of a fear of money or not wanting us to succeed. It was just, the focus on money as a thing was just not a healthy, productive way to move forward. So I know when I discuss, I just want a job that pays well. I want to be able to buy a home, and I want to be in a position to have, the nicer things and be able to travel. And unfortunately, that takes money. And I was sort of always driven back to, no, just find a passion. Money will always follow, but follow your heart first and don't focus on the money so much.
Mm. That's interesting as a concept, considering that, like, ultimately your parents worked in the mines, I'm assuming because the dollars were obviously a lot stronger. So do you feel that that was the relationship with, as you say, feeding the seven mouths, or did that also mean that we needed to start thinking about what was there for tomorrow? Like, was there a lot of tomorrow discussion and a lot of planning for your parents past the big family?
No, nothing at all. Nothing was spoken about in terms of what the long-term strategy was, how they were going to retire, what that would look like. I think from Mum and Dad's perspective, it was, we made a lot of big sacrifices having to go work in careers that we weren't necessarily planning on. And but what we want from you is to have the opportunity of choice in terms of following the passion, and don't get caught up on chasing the dollars, because if you do decide to have a family, it's really important that you put your future first and find something that rewards you more than just the income. So I think that was more where they were coming from, trying to impart that wisdom.
Well, it's nice wisdom, right?
So there's a fair bit for us to unpack there, Tim. So we're just going to pause quickly. We'll have a chat with Tom. So same question to you, Tom. What were the discussions like over the dinner table for you growing up around money?
Yeah, look, my upbringing was totally different to Tim's. I came from a family that was relatively comfortable in life. My dad had come from nothing and built his own business. My mum came from, I guess, a more comfortable lifestyle. So came from a family of perhaps money. So growing up, I guess, I had one instance of my mum in my ear, like, oh, very materialistic. We've got this, we've got that. But then my dad in my other ear, well, nothing in life comes for free. If you want to have a comfortable life, you've got to work your backside off. And so I was kind of in a world between. I mean, I grew up very comfortable through life. Money was kind of never really a taboo aspect in our house. Dad was very down to earth in that aspect, but then I also had my mum, who's quite overbearing and comes from a totally different upbringing. Yeah, it was a different upbringing, that's for sure.
How did you navigate that? What did that mean for you? Sort of seeing mum with a bit more splash, and your dad sort of the opposite. Where did you meet in the middle?
I'll be honest, I was kind of dabbing my feet in between each, knowing I had, I guess, that bit of a cushion behind me in terms of my mum's side, but then also knowing, well, that could all just be snuffed away for whatever reason. And, my dad's voice was in my ear, things can change, you could lose it all for whatever reason, so it's like, it's good to get the value of money yourself and not just have it handed to you, I guess.
So it sounds like, Tom, that you had a bit of a safety net, which is, a luxury to know that you've got that. But here's your dad who's self-made, starts his own business. Did he ever feel comfortable in terms of the amount of money he had? Was he always hardworking? And did he ever, did you see him enjoying the spoils of that effort that he's put in today?
Not really. I mean, I've seen the heartbreak and the heartache he went through my upbringing, close to losing it all. He was a man of very simple things, but then, I mean, he had to sell away the stuff he did treasure. He had to give away that, on the brink. I would never say he would go around splashing things, or he never told me he was comfortable, or he was always striving to do better for himself and for his family.
Yep.
And you're one of how many kids?
3.
3. Okay, so 5 mouths to fill. So a question for either of you, with that as a backdrop, what did that look like as you transitioned through dependence on parents as you go through teenage, and then you get to your first job where all of a sudden you're in control of the cash, it's coming into your bank account? What were the legacies, or what were the perhaps conditioning that needed to be overcome? What did that first paycheck look like in the first couple of years in the workforce for you, with regards to money?
Well, I think for me, I was champing at the bit to get my first job. Boom! The little day I turned 14 and 9 months in New South Wales, I had my resume in hand and I was out there, and I got a job that day in an ice cream parlour, of all things. And even though I was still at school, I wanted to work just as many hours as I could. And they said, no, legally you can only work this many hours a week as a kid. I was just wanted to get out there, and I knew what independence money would bring, and just treated myself to all the things you do when you're not even 15, ice creams, movies, just junk food, and just crazy purchases. And that sort of fueled the way I spent money probably for the next decade or so, in terms of just splash it when you get it, have fun for now, and make up for lost time in a way. So for me, job was just independence and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I was actually quite late to the workforce. I mean, I didn't have time after school to, like, around the age of 15, 16, because my parents forced me into extracurricular activities, which at the time I really hated. So I didn't actually join the workforce until after uni. And by that stage, again, it was just more along the lines of, well, I had no real, I hate to say it, but I had no real, I guess, stresses about money or finances. It was just, okay, I've got my degree, now it's time to start working and just have fun at that point.
So obviously we heard around Tim's parents basically talking about follow your dreams, follow your passions, and so forth. Tom, from your point of view, you obviously had that extracurricular activity going on, whether that be maybe music or whatever you were doing at the time. What was your message from your parents around your, finding purpose or finding something that you enjoy versus, what was drilled into us when we were growing up? Bryce has talked about this a lot, is get a qualification, make sure you've got something to fall back on. There's a lot of that rather than following your dreams and your passions. What was your story there in terms of what your parents encouraged you to do?
So again, my mum pretty much just told me that I was going to uni to be a paramedic. And I went off to uni to be a paramedic. I mean, I was lucky in the sense that my parents paid for my degree, so I didn't have to walk away with any HECS or anything. So, I mean, I went along that line. My family were my mum, my brother to a certain extent, and my sister all in the medical field. So I kind of give it a go. And it wasn't until I kind of halfway through that my dad really knew I was unhappy. It probably wasn't for me. And he kind of stepped in and said, well, I don't think we've actually taken the time to, what is it that you want to do in life? And
wow, that's awesome.
That is cool. And sorry, Tim, just to circle back with the 4 other siblings, with your parents telling you that message, follow your dreams, of your brothers and sisters, who followed their dreams and who took the more adventurous road, and what was their stories?
It's interesting because my siblings have all kept very local in the sense that they haven't really spread their wings overseas or done anything too crazy or outlandish. They're all working very, very normal, respectable jobs. I'm probably the black sheep in that I threw caution to the wind and just took opportunities as they came up and always said yes. So I had the luck of living overseas and the luxury of traveling for a number of years, and pretty much all my jobs, the only thing I knew is that I just wanted to travel. I just wanted to be in an aircraft. I wanted to be exploring every day of my life, and every job direction has sort of pivoted to allow that to happen in very different industries. It just always had to have that element of travel no matter what. So I had the pleasure of doing that for about 10 years before I finally decided, well, what on earth am I even doing? I should just fly and cut out the middleman and be done with it. So
Well, I guess you we will get to the more recent jobs in a second, but I'm interested. So just to round that discussion out, we have a case where you get in for Tom, it's in 20s. For you, it was at 14 and 9 months. But let's just fast forward until your 20s. How did you manage the money? Were you budget? Did you write budgets? Were you just there's some money left at the end of the week? How did you manage your money when you were totally independent and it was, if it was to be, it was up to you?
For me, I was probably, again, seeing stuff as a hindsight at times. I mean, in my 20s, it was just, I've got money, just have fun. I had a lot of, I guess, catch up years to do. So stupidly back then, just spent whatever I had, and if it meant living, pretty much it was just living paycheck to paycheck, which was new experience for me. I kind of just wanted to be in that nitty gritty of day-to-day life, and
for me it was a very it's not shameful, like I'm happy to talk about it, but I guess I lived the life of the Gen Y, and that was just fell into the credit trap to fund that lifestyle that I was living on borrowed time, I suppose. And living overseas, I was earning pretty average, below average wage, and it was really sort of paycheck to paycheck, but there was no formal structure in place. It was just get it, spend it, scramble for the next one. And that led into an area where I wasn't happy. I was living off credit cards and, robbing Peter to pay Paul with one credit card to the next. And I came home from overseas with a credit card debt that was, well into the double figures. It was quite a stressful, scary situation that I let myself sort of get into. And then that's what kind of smartened me up and snapped me out of it, and went, okay, this isn't sustainable. I need to find a better way to live and have some plans and structure in place for myself before it becomes damaging to my long-term happiness and opportunities, I suppose. And
what was that? What snapped you out of it?
I think I came back and realized I had to, at the time, face the fact that, I'd been living off credit and having to resort to approaching family and friends and going, look, I've put myself in this stupid situation where I'm unfortunately now having to play catch-ups, asking for help in that regard and getting help from family and friends to help sort of bail me out. But then that was only enough to cover maybe a fifth of what I needed to repay. So I think what snapped me out was the realizing that I wasn't happy in that situation. It wasn't bringing me any sort of satisfaction. And it's a hollow lifestyle when you're not really paying for it yourself. It's borrowed time. And I was thinking, well, this is the future and the lifestyle that I want for myself, but I need to get back to my roots and pull myself up by my bootstraps and dig in and earn it first. I saw my friends going down very similar paths where they were facing bankruptcy and having to go live with mum and dad in their 30s, and basically going back to where they were in their teens, and just not setting themselves up for a bright future. And I saw that in friends and thought, that just isn't the future I want for myself, and that's exactly where I'm heading if I go down this path.
So, Tim, how did you approach organising your money when you did get back from overseas? And what was did you pay yourself first? Did you contact your creditors? Were you talking to the banks, or were you, what was the program? You said you obviously took some borrowings from family and friends. Tell us a little about how you got out of that debt spiral.
I guess it's probably no surprise. I just, through some research of my own, stumbled upon Scott Pape and The Barefoot Investor. And really for me, that was the catalyst, reading that book and going, wow, there's a way out of this. There's a very simple structure to follow, and I'm going to succeed. I know that in the past, when I put my mind to things, it happens. I make it happen no matter what. And so initially, exactly that, just being really honest, tallying up the debt, snowballing it, working out what needed to be done, and then just recognizing that my income was never going to pay this off. I had to go get 3, 4, 5 jobs at a time and sacrifice quality time with Thomas and downtime, essentially working 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, just to, as soon as possible, get that debt paid off. That was my driving force for a good 2-year window there.
Wow. well done. Well done.
Tim, that's incredible, right? You use the word snowball, and if someone listens to this and they hear, they can relate to you. They're maybe living on credit and in a bit of a sort of a debt spiral. Can you explain what you meant by snowball and how someone else might be able to benefit from your experience?
Yeah, for me, it was immediately working out, well, which is the bigger debt, which one's got the highest interest rate, which is going to have the most impact immediately, to see that number one coming down, but also to have the greatest impact moving forward. So for me, it was just really being honest and having a really thorough assessment of what was coming in, what was going out, how could I minimize this and reduce the time it's going to take to pay it off. So it was really about lining up the biggest debt first and smashing that one down, being that it also had the highest interest rate, and then just going from there. And I know some people will go the opposite way. They'll start with their smallest debt and domino. For me, the biggest impact was just seeing the larger number go down, but also using the banks to consolidate the debt as well, doing a lot of rollovers just to try and minimize the amount of interest that I was paying on these accounts that were going nowhere, essentially, and just trying to chip that big number down first.
Well, congratulations to you. It's a great news story. Hey, so we get through the other side of that over a couple of year period, and you obviously getting more serious about your relationship and then also about your careers. This is the big pivot, because this is an interesting part of your story that we want to share today, is around the careers that you're in. So why don't you let everyone know basically what work you were doing, and then what happened when a pandemic hits and basically stops your industry?
We were both working for the same company, same airline. I was one of the managers there, and Tim, I'd been there 9 years. You'd been there?
Yeah, in total 7.
7 years.
So we started off both in domestic flying in completely different cities. Both made the decision around 2017 to go international. And that's actually how we met, was during our training school, the conversion through to international. We just hit it off and became fast friends. Continued flying for a number of years, and we both pretty much decided pretty early on that this is just what we wanted to do through till essentially retirement. We just didn't see any other job or industry that had any sort of interest or impact on us the way that flying did. It was really part of our DNA, and really a part of what made us fundamentally happy. It was never a job. I don't think we ever thought for a second that it felt like we were giving up anything, or we felt like we were just so lucky and grateful to have that position. We know a lot of people covet, and for us, it was the lifestyle. It wasn't a job. It was purely a family that we got to see every day, and we got paid to travel the world and do something that we really, really enjoyed doing, and did it really, really well. And then suddenly to have that taken away for both of us at the exact same time was really, really brutal and transformative, really. And in a way, we've come out very grateful for that experience, because we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have never found the armchair guide to property investing. We never would have found the property couch. So in a way, silver linings, it's worked out for the best. And we see the absolute silver linings and the positives that's come out of the situation. But it was certainly the last 18 months have probably been the most painful and stressful parts of both our lives, and having to both go through it together and navigate that as a team when we're both dealing with very challenging things has been hard.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. Well, I'd be certainly interested to build a bit of a context on, you said it was about lifestyle and, it came to a crashing end, but just for those of us who aren't long haul international airline, workers, what does the lifestyle look like? Tell us what were you doing? How good was it?
We worked off a 28-day roster. Of those 28 days, you'd be away from home maybe once or twice within that 28-day period, and then the rest of that time off at home is yours. So just
cooling your heels.
Yeah, do whatever you like. Watch TV series. Just downtime. So
yeah, you do a lot of, I guess it's like shift work. You do a lot of hours in a short amount of time. So we'd be flying to LA. You're doing 16, 18-hour shifts where you're on. You have a couple of days in LA or another city, and then you do it on the way back, and then you have a few days to recover and recuperate and prepare for the next one, and you just do it again, really. And the lifestyle was the jet setting, living out of a backpack, and never really unpacking. Is just one hotel room to the next, and home just feels like another hotel because you're barely there. So what's the point of unpacking? And you were just living in this whirlwind of hanging out with really cool people, meeting really amazing people as well from so many different backgrounds, and just having the privilege of getting paid to basically do what everyone else slogs their 9 to 5 to have the privilege of doing on their downtime. That to me, that's what it was all about. It's like, you're crazy. I'm ferrying you to work, but this is my work, and I'm going up to cocktails in a few hours.
And you were doing different cities, or would you just be doing the LA leg for a certain period of time and then switch? Were you going all around the world?
We were doing LA, Hong Kong. I was actually based in London for a few years, for a short amount of time, and I was doing the Caribbean, Africa, all across America and Asia.
And on your days off, your body wasn't thrown around. You were just, in terms of different time zones, you're just on adrenaline, having a great time.
Just became your new normal. You're always fatigued. It was a different kind of tired, but that just became your new normal. You learned how to adapt with it, and
you were just foggy a lot. Very foggy is the way to describe. It felt like early onset dementia in a way. I'm assuming that sort of short-term memory out the window. I'll meet you then. No recollection of setting a date.
So the future planning and future pacing about your life and so forth as your global jet setters, what was in the horizon for you guys around buying a home, settling down, or as you said, you mentioned you wanted to keep doing this forever. So what sort of forward planning was being done around that idea of setting up a base and getting more stable financially?
Well, probably about a year, maybe 18 months out before COVID took hold, we had the discussion, we sat down and we realized, what do we want to do? We're living together now, but renting isn't our dream in a shoebox apartment. What are we going to do in terms of long term? So we decided pretty quickly that, buying a principal place of residence, somewhere to live, somewhere to call home was definitely a shared vision that we had. So probably around that 18-month mark out, we decided, okay, let's get serious. Let's start saving. Let's open up a joint account and start paying bills properly. Let's start following a structure and start building towards something. So we were kind of just passively chipping away at the savings. Once I'd paid down my debt, I didn't slow down. I probably ramped up even more the hours of the other jobs I was doing, just because I could see now, well, hang on, I've cleared that debt, and now I'm actually moving for the first time in my life into the black, and it's growing, and it's having an amazing motivational factor for me. And then Thomas did the same. You picked up other work, and
somewhat a little reluctantly to begin with, I must say.
He didn't have much choice, to be honest.
For me, thinking, God, I've got to go out and get another job. It was all just a bit. But then, seeing how much hard work Tim had paid off a large sum of debt and then was now in the black I was like, well, I need to come to the table with this as well, and had a chat with my dad, and he was like, well, if you want it, I heard his thoughts in my head. It's like, well, you got to work hard and you've got to do it for yourself. That way you appreciate it more. So,
we knew we'd come home on, as I said, we'd come off an 18-hour, maybe 24-hour duty sometimes, and land at 6 a.m. into Melbourne. And I'd go home, shower, and trot off to the next job for the day. And just, it was a lot of warnings from friends going, you're going to burn out. You're burning the candle at both ends. But I think what really fueled me was just seeing that we actually had a vision that we were working towards together for the first time, and that was enough to just live off adrenaline alone. I suppose we were both just out there slogging away and just killing it, really using every hour that we could to build towards something that was feeding us and rewarding us in ways that neither of us had had before.
Yeah. So you're living this wonderful lifestyle. You're traveling. You're smashing debt. You're in the black, and then this thing called a pandemic comes along. So, talk us through early days of thought process and the things that were running through your mind as you starting to see this spread throughout the world, and then even perhaps your thoughts on whether you thought it was going to affect you here in Oz at first.
Well, we were still flying, obviously, and I was in Hong Kong when it was kind of the Hong Kong authorities were saying it was a big deal, but then Australia was still kind of, oh no, you don't need to wear masks. And yeah, so we could see, traveling the world, we could see something was happening. And then the 16th of March, we were told that we were getting stood down for a little while. And by the 24th of March, we had secured casual employment, because we knew, well, we'd made a joint decision that we knew we had a buffer of savings, but we didn't want to, I guess, eat into that. We didn't want to erode that, knowing all the hard work. We wanted to try and preserve that, knowing what our goal was. So we pivoted straight into just casual work until this pandemic was to go away.
It was an interesting time. I think that Thomas is right. We were flying to Hong Kong, I remember, and people in Hong Kong, of course, very mindful of hygiene, would always be wearing masks pre-pandemic anyway. But we saw it become a real norm thing, and the communication from Australia was just so different to what we were seeing in Hong Kong. And I know for a time there, I guess we're in a bit of denial in terms of just listening to what the media was saying, that it would just blow over. It's just another SARS, it's another bird flu, swine flu. It'll come, it'll go, it'll be a disruptor, but then things will be very quickly back to normal. And then we just very quickly saw that just wasn't the case. And our company were very quick to slow things down and then very quickly shut up shop internationally. And then it became a little bit more transparent to us that, okay, this isn't just going to blow over. We're potentially looking at being stood down for a very long time, and we just don't know what that future looks like. So as Thomas said, we knew that we weren't going to sit around and wait to find out what's happening, that we'd be proactive and get ahead of the curve in terms of finding some other form of income and employment before we were sort of fighting with thousands of others in a very similar situation. And then, of course, it never recovered. And it took 12, it was in August, I think we were told that no, officially the position was no longer tenable, that we were both being made redundant, with no future plans to ever take us back. And it wasn't until April this year that we officially were severed and set adrift and on our way. So we knew then that door was effectively closed for us, that we'd either have to retrain and go back to entry level at domestic. And we just both made that decision that as much as we loved flying and we loved the lifestyle, that if we wanted to have a secure retirement, minimum wage in our 30s probably wasn't the best outlook for us. And I know many people are in that situation, and either by choice or just where they are in life. But I think we knew that to reach the goals that we wanted for our future, we'd have to make sacrifices, and that meant, unfortunately, closing that chapter in our life.
It's a remarkable story. Just the fact that it's almost like you glossed over, oh yeah, we just decided that we'd go and get casual employment. I mean, this was a massively big thing happening to you in your world. And for a lot of people, denial probably would have lasted longer than, I think you said, from the 16th of March to the 24th of March. But you guys pivoted almost immediately. And you said you wanted to get in front of the rest of the crew. That's remarkable. And it sounds like a really sound strategic advice. But back then you're dealing with a whole bunch of emotions and thoughts that are running through your mind. I mean, can you kind of take us back to the decision where you thought, well, I've got to chase some casual employment because something serious is happening?
I think it was a form of denial, to be honest, at the time. I think action was our way of taking back control from what was a situation that was very quickly spiraling out of our scope of control. So I think in the sense that we had no idea, we couldn't predict what was going to happen. No one could at that time. And it was very much an unknown. We decided that action was better than inaction. And no matter what happened, we could, if we went back to flying the next week, great. At least we took the opportunity to jump while we still could. And we weren't put in a tough position where we were forced to make decisions from a weekend, I suppose. So in a way, it was that denial phase where we were just sort of thinking, oh, well, it probably will get back to normal quicker than what it has been, sooner than later. But just in case it doesn't, let's protect ourselves here and just find the opportunity amongst the chaos. So then you reskill, or well, you took the casual job and then you set upon reskilling. So take us through the next part, right? So you've got some control back, and then what does that look like for the fact that you guys had got into the black, you'd had a vision for the future,
what was the pivot looking like at that point?
It was still very much a we still probably don't know really where we wanted to pivot to long term. I think at that time it was okay. Obviously, the government were throwing a lot of incentives around moving into the COVID space. They opened up call centers, so we moved into the call center space around COVID hotline, aged care, and then initially dealing with the COVID crisis, and then we both pivoted through to aged care. We found that it was really a good use of our skill set, customer service, and dealing with people from very different backgrounds and very complex needs. So for us, I think the pivot and the transfer of skills was quite a natural progression, but we didn't really have a plan longer than what's happening the next day, because we probably went through around 3 or 4 temporary contracts that all just sort of fell through. They were set up, the call center was set up, and then it was meant to be a 3 or 4 month position, and after a month they pulled the pin. So we were thrown out again and just had to quickly scramble to find another opportunity. And I think within the space of about 4 or 6 months, we'd probably gone through about 7 or 8 jobs between us. Just as soon as we landed on our feet, the carpet would be pulled out again. So it's a bit of a blur, and honestly, I don't have a lot of recollection from that time, because we were just scrambling, just because the ultimate goal is we just didn't want to touch our savings. We worked just so hard for that the idea of spending the cent of it was just so painful. Obviously, we had to keep paying the rent and keep the lights on. But for us, it wasn't enough to sit back and go, well, we'll just write this out.
So you've got this story going on where, as you say, you're going from job to job, trying to transfer your skill sets. But so that's a bit of a blur, but you also did some other important planning, right? You started to focus on educating yourself about what good money management looks like, and then, starting to fill out this story of planning, become what you plan to become. So share a bit of that backstory with us.
That's really true, actually. And it was very quickly in July, so only a few months afterwards, that we realized that in order to protect that wealth base that we've accumulated, we needed to set up some sort of formal structure. And we knew we wanted to buy a property. How are we going to get there? And how on earth are we ever going to do this now in a pandemic where we both just lost our long-term jobs? Will we ever be able to buy now? Is that it? Is our story done in terms of buying a property? Are we done before we started? So it led me to go online and sort of research, how do you buy a property? Neither of us have done it before. What's the first step? And it was really hard going initially to find anything informative and non-biased that wasn't available on a bank's website or something like that. So we found through a forums, I was looking and I typed, I just need help. Can anyone recommend some resources for first-time home buyers that are independent? Great information for starters, jargon-free, just something to sink our teeth into. And one of the recommendations from an anonymous tip on a forum was check out the Property Couch. It's a wealth of information. I thought, well, I've never listened to a podcast. I've never looked into anything formal with property. So I gave it a go. I remember listening to the first few episodes while just out walking to clear my mind and thinking, actually, this stuff just really makes sense. It's not impossible for us to get our heads around it and start to understand it. And that just opened up the doors. Just started reading as much as I could, or as much as we could, in regards to not just property, but also just mindset. Discovered Robert Kiyosaki, Napoleon Hill, and that sort of just really started that process of exploration, I suppose. I don't know how else to describe it.
I'm glad, I'll just be honest, and I'm not trying to push any product here, but I'm glad that Tim finally found the Armchair Guide, because it was kind of like dating almost, where there were some monsters out there that I was just like, I'd kind of lost focus. And I'm glad that Tim found your series and your podcast, because I took a bit of convincing to come around to it, knowing what we had been through prior to that.
And look, we found some Spruikers up front, of course, like they're out there, and you type in property, they're going to be the first ones that come up. And they did, and we went through a few like free online seminars, introductory things, and knew straight away, I wouldn't say we're cynical, but we're skeptical of what's being proposed. And I think we both had a good enough idea recognize that this is probably not the path we want to go. It sounds too good to be true. I'm not confident. Setting off red flags. don't want to follow that path. And then when we found the Armchair Guide and the podcast, and it really set that foundation. And then we formalized the learning that we'd taken and the exposure we'd had through the podcast, and got a property portfolio plan set up and in place, which gave us that framework that we'd been so hungry to find, that we couldn't find anywhere else, that provided the full picture, the full scope of this is where we're at now and what was unique to our circumstances, because we're trying to build a property plan in the most painful and stressful part of our life. So having to have those deep introspective self-assessments, and also make those decisions about, well, starting with the end in mind, how on earth can we picture our life in 40 years time, 20 years time, 5 years time, when we're both upside down and back to front? How do we get there? But thankfully, through great generous support, we were able to claw our way to a pretty clear vision of what our future could look like, and how to get there. Gave us a roadmap.
I think just having those tools and resources at hand, I guess, we knew what we wanted. It was just a matter of getting that probed out of us, or what is it? And it changed a little bit. We're kind of like, oh, we haven't really thought about that. But I guess it's just having a team behind you that we feel confident in, that we know will. So it's now up to us to input to achieve the goals, and to follow that through to the end. And
I think the big thing for us is that we knew we didn't have the skill set. This wasn't our background. This wasn't our area of expertise. We've got friends who've gone and bought, and family brought property just, off their own research and their own assessment, and probably haven't done the best by themselves. So we knew straight away we needed support, we needed help, we needed experts in our corner who were going to guide us to make sure that we avoided those pitfalls and those common traps, because the opportunity cost was always going to be too great. There's too much risk. Let's minimize it and get the support we need.
So I'm interested in the challenging for any type of plan to become what you plan to become is the alignment around the personal goals and then the money needed to achieve those. And Thomas, you were mentioning just a moment there around prying that information out. How did that process work for you? Like, what, in terms of when you were in this, because ultimately any type of planning is about trying to achieve your goals and objectives. So what was it that worked for you in terms of solidifying your personal goals, and then how they correlate to the financial story?
My personal goals is, well, look, like everyone, I don't want to work until I'm 70, 80. And reading that, it's up to us. We can set those parameters, and it can all be there to see, well, this is what it's going to take for you now. And this is what the journey will look like if you want to retire at or before 60. And just having that, I come from backgrounds of very procedurally driven industries, working for the ambulance service and aviation. So I guess once that plan was created, to me, I seen that as a procedure. And I just strive in that. I know where the boundaries are. This is what I need to achieve. This is what I need to stick in. So long as I've got that, I'm happy then to just, I guess, carry away and just business as usual. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I know that the end goal is more important than, I guess, needs now, but we're not sacrificing anything right now. And building those, I guess, little luxuries here and there, holidays, etc., for the duration of the plan really just sold it for me. I was like, well, okay, it is achievable. It's, we don't have to strip everything out and live a boring lifestyle. So that really sold it.
That's the most important part, right? It is about getting that blend right. I mean, you guys were traveling the world and getting paid to do that, and travel's in your DNA. I have the same experience in growing up in an airline family, right? Where, I'm just addicted to travel. So I had to need to find a way of making sure that I had enough money today to travel, and as well as tomorrow. So what about you, Tim? What was the journey like for you in discovering that alignment between, tomorrow and also getting the balance right today as well?
Yeah, I guess, as I mentioned earlier, like once I've made the decision, it's really hard for me. It's 0 to 100. It's pedal to the floor.
You can see Tom shaking his head there.
Thomas wasn't even in the, to begin with. Thomas wasn't even in the car. He was holding on to the bumper, getting dragged.
I was very skeptical at first, and once Tim's got his mind set on something, we're going for it. And I guess it was just him allowing myself, and once we met with our team, it all started to fall into place. And yeah.
But saying that, look, it was on the surface, that was very much what was the image was probably that, yeah, 0 to 100 and we were all systems go. But absolutely, I was dealing with a lot of insecurities and uncertainties around, well, is this for us? For me, having to reconcile wanting to find security and comfort in the now, being that we had this cyclone circling around us everywhere, and it felt like we were being attacked just from every angle. We had very little in terms of comfort or security. It was a terrifying time for us. We didn't have family or friends. We were in lockdown. We were isolated, dealing with it was grief, really. And so having that to cling to meant it was a life raft. We had something positive that was not just for now. It wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't a sugar rush. It was long-term, future-driven, and a focus. So ultimately, that's what really appealed to me. It was like, well, yeah, this will eventually pass. The cyclone will die. Everyone around us, and we forget. For us, as you mentioned earlier, we were living in this horrible situation, but friends and family, the life just went on. Like, it was a holiday for them. They were getting to work from home. It was a great time. Like, yeah, they weren't seeing family and friends, and that was tough, but they also had their careers, they had their support networks, they had their friends around them. So it was kind of this cognitive dissonance in a way, that we were sort of, trying to survive and but also plan. It was just, they weren't mutually, they didn't work together initially. It was a lot of sacrifice, but I knew that the goal was really what was driving us, and having a goal has always been really important to me. So yes, we're already sacrificing, so what's a little bit more? But using the framework, like we had money smarts to guide us, and have that framework as well to sort of go, well, how do we assess? How do we feel like we're not sacrificing everything for tomorrow? And having that balance to go, well, yeah, even what we have, the means that we have access to is enough. We don't have to be earning a lot of money to have a future. We don't have to give up everything we enjoy today. We can still have creature comforts and still live for tomorrow as well. So just that finding the balance is key for us.
Tim, as you're listening to the messages that Ben and I are sharing on the podcast, can you remember what the epiphany moment was for you, where it's just this information, potentially these spruikers, but then all of a sudden you straightened up and said, actually, this is the point where I realized this is the path I want to go. Can you remember that?
It's interesting. I try and recall if there was a specific moment, and it was probably in those first 20 foundational episodes where what was different to me straight away was that there was no hard pitch. There wasn't a sale behind it. It was really spoke to me in terms of, just building up my own knowledge and feeling comfortable with the content and going, well, actually, this what seemed like a monumental exercise to understand is actually digestible in small chunks. So I think the moment for me was when we were, one of your podcasts was talking about that anyone can do it. It was during one of the Q&A episodes early on where, no matter where your situation, I know there was one person who was going through a tough situation, and they were sort of asking for validation, going, well, is this even for me? And I remember your feedback was, it just spoke to me in the sense that I was like, well, it may not be the exact situation that we are in, but we're also facing challenges which are just huge and seem insurmountable, but because we've broken them down and tackled them one by one, we've managed to find a way forward. And that's what sort of resonated with me. It was like, well, this is achievable for us. We just break it down. We don't have to have all the answers. We can engage a team, and we can lean upon the knowledge of others to help propel us forward in a safer way. So I think the epiphany for me was, well, I looked at crypto was booming at the time. Everyone was saying, the share market's about to die, and pull your money out. So that was kind of a scary thing. Well, where do we go? And to me, property it clicked, because at the time we were going, well, we've got our savings. Do we just throw it into crypto? Do we throw it into a bank account and hide it for years? What do we do? And I think very quickly we decided property was the way forward for us.
And so tell us about the plan. So what are the big milestones that you're looking to do? What's your travel budget look like each year? And obviously, as you've, people are going to want to know the climbing of the hill story, right? Tell us what you're doing now in regards to, your work and the career aspirations that you have, and then ultimately, what it all looks like together.
Yeah, I guess we're working with Brendan. He was really instrumental in drawing out of us in terms of what our plan is for the future, because it was a big ask.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, trying to map that out, and
he had a lot of patience.
A lot of patience, because our thoughts would swing by the hour in terms of what can we do, what was realistic, and what we want to achieve for ourselves. So we decided that definitely we wanted to buy our own home, and we settled on with initial plan to get 3 investment properties, as well as our own home. And initially our plan was to purchase our own home first, but we've recently had a review of our plan, and based on our financial circumstances and the market, we decided actually the best way forward, being that we are in jobs that we would like to make long-term careers. So there's still a lot of movement in that regard, that probably just investing for the next few years is probably the ideal strategy for us. So at the moment, we're looking at borderless investing, purchasing our first investment property before we settle down, just so that we can have that control if we need to move again for new jobs as they come up, because we're both still going through that discovery phase now of where do we want to go next. We're still very much in the holding pattern in that regard, but I think long term we decided that we would love to retire early if possible, in our mid to late 50s, ideally, so we could pack up bags and get back to traveling.
And still, I guess, young enough to enjoy it and enjoy the travel. And Tim loves thrill-seeking stuff. Me, probably not so much. So while we're still young enough, I guess, to retire and enjoy a comfortable life, we set ourselves a pretty ambitious target, but knowing the hard work and with the help of our team behind us, seeing that it was achievable has been pretty astonishing. And
we've got a pretty healthy surplus each year now that we're targeting, because we've managed to really, really deeply assess our cash flow and work out where we could cut our expenses. So we've really taken a hatchet to that, and paring it back. And, travel, well, we set ourselves, I think it was $5,000 a year allowance for travel, but at the moment that's not going anywhere. So it's healthily building into that little kitty until we can finally get back overseas. But at the moment, I think we're quite comfortable. We're just enjoying the process.
Yeah. And even then, we've got our money smarts, and we know where our targets are and what we need to be hitting. And look, if something comes up and there's something that we want, well, there's a lot of casual work out there. So we're just, to protect our numbers, we've been working some casual jobs prior to lockdown here and there, just to help boost that fund up a bit more. And
we've both found permanent full-time roles now, which is fantastic, because that means that we can actually start looking at purchasing property. Obviously, with those casual jobs, are really limited in terms of what our options were moving forward for loan structure. But now we've both passed probation and we're comfortable where we are, but certainly just keen to get that property journey back on track and not waste any more time if we can, because the opportunity cost obviously is huge if we let it go on forever. But certainly we know we've got a plan, but we're certainly not resting on that. We've decided that, we're going to keep working additional jobs as we can and just bump those numbers up, and every dollar goes into the surplus, just to fuel the journey, keeping a little bit on the side for play money. Not that there's much we can do in lockdown anyway, so there's not really that much to distract us from the journey.
Gents, was it easy to get to the joint finish line, because you've got to set a passive income goal? And were you close in alignment or not? And if not, was there any argy-bargy to get there? And also, were you surprised that your home and 3 investment properties would get you there?
I definitely was surprised, knowing what the ambitious target we had set. I was expecting Brendan to come back and say, no. But, he went away, done the numbers. Just what he set out and said, well, if you want to make this achievable, this is your targets. And just for me, seeing that on paper, I was like, bloody hell. Like, I was just excited to get the process rolling and say, well, let's start this now. So,
but in terms of like the shared vision, I think initially there's absolutely no point concealing that I had to sort of bring Thomas on board and bring him around. But it honestly didn't take long at all. I think once I was able to articulate that in order for us to be secure in the future, we've both gone through this process where we had a lot of control and direction in our life taken away by another person, another party. And I think we both recognize that that's just not something we ever want to experience again. Like, we want to take control of our future by both hands. And that means having a framework in place and not being at the whim of other people's and economies and anything, external factors that we can't control. So I think that's kind of the angle that I brought to Thomas. And I don't know if that helps other couples, but it really meant that for us, having a joint vision that we're working towards meant that it was really clear where we were headed together. And there wasn't a lot of discussion around, well, I don't want to sacrifice too much now. I think we both realized that, no, we're happy to sacrifice enough. But certainly we had to have negotiations around what to sacrifice. We both wanted to still be comfortable, but also knowing that we had that number, the target surplus that we're heading towards, and keeping that. We had set a figure in mind, and it just meant going, okay, well, what can we sacrifice and what can we have without jeopardizing that target number? Because we knew that was the number we'd agreed upon with our plan. And if we didn't hit it, the plan was worthless in a way. So in order for us to keep on track, we had to buckle down and focus on that number.
Very powerful, visuals, as well as having that sort of document in front of you. We talk about it, making the invisible visible, and that property investing is a process, not an event. And I think you guys are testimony to that in regards to, it's an ongoing process. Yes, those projections are long-term projections as well. Just out of curiosity, with those 3 properties, is there a sell down at all to supplement the income in retirement, or is that all, no, the debt basically is paid out over time with the passive income that comes from those properties as they turn from negative to positively geared?
Yeah, I think that was important to us initially. We had mentioned that we'd like to be able to hold the properties potentially forever, with no plan on selling down or cashing them in, but knowing that we had that option if we had to. But the importance for us was, keeping great quality assets, selecting the right ones from day one, and just holding them forever.
Well, that's an important point. I mean, when a black swan event like a pandemic hits, which is obviously unanticipated, to know that you've also got the peace of mind that the properties are going to eventually, have the debt retired, and it's that passive income you're generating. But if there is a black swan event or an unanticipated event where you need more of that cash up front, you could sell one. You don't have to sell them all. So it does give you that luxury of moving around. And as you say, because your situation is still a little bit fluid, even though you've got a clear pathway, there can still be deviations and roundabouts in the road on that pathway. You've also pivoted to allow for rent vesting, which also makes sense to me, until you basically put those, put your feet into those stronger foundations, and that career pathway, and that's going to provide you also with a more poignant next step once you get this first investment property underway.
I think having a team behind us to bounce those ideas off as well for this journey, for me, has been an absolute godsend, because it's like, well, okay, this is what we want to do, but then we start doubting our own selves because our knowledge base just isn't there. So, I mean, knowing that we've got that team in our corner to really do the heavy lifting for us, it's a true godsend for us.
Yeah, it just gives you that peace of mind and that confidence to continue to take one step forward after what has been an incredibly challenging 18 months for you guys. And your resilience has shown through your ability to, to look adversity and just basically move it to the side and keep that positive mindset is a testament to both of you guys. So congratulations on basically it all comes from the top down. So, good on you both.
No, thank you. If it wasn't for the podcast, I don't think, it would have been a lot harder to stay on track. Absolutely. Because I think having that daily affirmation and that reassurance, but also building up our knowledge and confidence base was fundamental, it's critical. If we just didn't have that, I don't know how we would be right now, to be honest, because it would have been a very lonely, overwhelming experience. And I can confidently say we probably would have just parked it and we still wouldn't have made any progress because we were just dealing with so much. So having that support from the both of you and the whole team has been...
It's been a beacon, really has. And I'm not trying to be over the top or dramatic there with it, but it's been like just a beacon and just a whole lot of dullness for us. Just knowing that that's the goal, and we've got a team behind us that's going to get us there and help us guide the way, knowing that, you know, the work's on us. You can give us the parameters, but yeah, it's been...
That's right, just equipping us with the knowledge we don't have over time. But I think we're so grateful for the community of the Property Couch and having you both provide that ample knowledge so generously and so willingly has just been a huge confidence booster for us. And as Thomas said, it gave us a focus, a direction that we really needed in our life at that time.
Well, stories like yours just fuel Ben and I enormously, but you're a living example of where the mind goes, the body follows, because at that time you guys did the work and you made the choice. And I think that's that shouldn't be lost in this story. But my final question for you both is, okay, so you've navigated a pandemic, you've changed, and now you've got a plan, but what does it feel like? And you've answered it in part, but if we reflect, you're looking back now and you're in the rear vision mirror at I think you said March 16 was the significant date for you, and what's the feeling of accomplishment that you actually have as you look back at that date, from the anxiety and the panic and the whatever emotions were running for you at the time to now? You know, your story has been incredible. I've enjoyed every minute of this. I think everyone in our community will enjoy it too. And you guys are now just you're a poster story for people that have been in your situation and what the necessary steps are. What does that feel like for you as you look back and look at that line in the sand date back in March the 16th?
Surreal. It's an odd experience. I go from moments of utter jubilation that we have, you know, we've achieved what we set out to achieve over those 12 months. We knew we had a 12-month plan, was to find a direction. To the anxiety, it does absolutely creep in, but where we go, well, we are in a very fluid situation. We still haven't completely landed on our feet. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. Anything could happen, but I think the reassurance and the confidence that, yeah, we've absolutely taken this situation, the bull by the horns, and we've made the best outcome we could of what was happening around us. So I think the confidence I get from that and the reassurance is just worth its weight in gold. It really does fuel me every day and going, well, you know, knowing that we've come 12 months or more from this horrible situation that we didn't prepare for, we couldn't prepare for, we're actually heading towards something really, really positive and productive. So that fills me with confidence. And it's a little bit of a snowball effect, because you look back where we were and where we could have been now, and where some of our friends still are, unfortunately. You know, that small that initial action to just not sit down, to keep pushing, has paid off in dividends, and we've got a brighter future because of it.
If it is to be, it's up to me. And you guys are a testimony to that. I mean, you know, Bryce and I have been very fortunate in the investing that we've made and the property journey that we've in. And this for us is, you know, our way of paying it forward. But we can present this content to people who choose to take it in different ways. Some who might play the victim, who will have an excuse, who will find, you know, that's the challenge for us, right? I mean, ultimately, you guys are the heroes on this journey because you've taken action. And that's why we finished the podcast with the, you know, sure, it's great to have the knowledge and it's good to learn, but if you don't act on it, it's absolutely wasted opportunity. So a credit to you guys. You are what makes it real for us. You are the ones who are taking the action and giving us as the fuel in our fires to keep delivering the training and the education. But we are ultimately only here as a guide. You are the ones who are taking the journey, and it was always in you. And now you're basically showing that up and in spades. So congratulations to both of you.
No, thank you to you both for everything that you provided. And I can say the summer series has been a really good motivator for us, because we get to see real life people taking action, as you said, and enabling the knowledge that they've gained through their experience. And that's reassuring. So I was like, well, if other people facing worse situations than us can really grow and learn from it and take action, then absolutely, so can we. We can do this too.
Brilliant.
Well, thanks again, gents. It's humbling when someone's prepared to be as transparent as you both have been and share your story with what is actually a large audience of people that will hear your story. So you will inspire people. There will be people who will take some of your story. I mean, there's so many takeaways in your story. It's ridiculous. Brilliant. But on behalf of everyone on the Property Couch and everyone listening to this, thanks very much for coming and joining us on the couch.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Emma. And thanks, Ivers, of course.
All right, Ben, if that doesn't inspire you, like to not play the victim, but just to get on with it, I don't know what does.
It's a story, Bryce, of glass half full, persistence and confidence. And I that's what I love about it, right? And to, pivot, agility. It's got all of those moving parts where they had every opportunity to play the victim. They had every opportunity to say that, we can't control this, so it's going to be our story. No, they decided to change the story and get on with it. And so it is a testament to their tenacity to be able to move forward. And I think anyone in their community, this is what we keep talking about in our community, future orientation, lifestyle design. If it is to be, it's up to me. It's all there in this episode. So thank you to the boys. They did an awesome job in crafting out and telling this story. So, that was a ripper.
Yeah, it was so good. And interesting, different backstories, different money backstories when they were growing up and how that merged, and having a plan actually doesn't matter if you've got different backgrounds then, that you get to decide where you're headed together in a partnership like that as a couple. And it was inspiring, and I loved every minute. And I loved the mindset that the most out of all of that to not play the victim. So Tim and Tom, we thank you very much. You're credit to yourselves. I think you'll inspire a lot of people who listen to your story, Ben. And you can see why we love this time of the year. Normally summer series, we're doing it here in the winter. Yeah. But hearing from these people is amazing.
I'll just get you motivated to, keep improving, right? That constant evolution of seeing others who are doing it, who are challenging adversity as it's thrown at them, and just, basically stepping over it, right? It's just great stuff. I love it.
There you go, folks. 1 down, 3 to go in our winter series. So stick around. We've got plenty more to come, Ben, including a conversation with 2 very special guests next week who are also going to share their story, mate. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
There you go, folks. See you next week.
Hey there folks, Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listen to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.